Letting go to live freely after 61. For much of your life, you may have lived by certain expectations showing up when asked, saying yes when you wanted to say no, and putting others' comfort before your own. Maybe you've done it for the sake of harmony, to avoid conflict, or simply because it felt like the right thing to do. Over time, it becomes second nature, but that doesn't mean it always feels good. The truth is, always putting others first can slowly wear you down. It creates a quiet kind of pressure, a kind that makes your time feel less like your own. You may find yourself running on autopilot, doing things out of habit or obligation, even when they leave you tired, resentful, or disconnected from yourself. But something shifts around the age of 61. You begin to see life differently. You realize time is precious, energy is limited, and peace of mind is no longer something to postpone. The old rules, the unspoken ones about what you should do, start to lose their grip. What once felt like duty may now feel like a burden, and that's okay to admit. Instead of continuing down that path, you can choose something gentler. You can start saying no without guilt. You can give yourself permission to step back from the noise, to decline invitations that no longer bring joy, and to surround yourself with people and experiences that feel nourishing. Your presence matters, but it doesn't need to be everywhere at once. At this stage, you don't need to prove anything. You've already lived, loved, and given so much. Now is the time to come home to yourself, to make choices that honor who you are today. And as you do, you may find a deeper sense of freedom rooted not in what others expect, but in what truly feels right for you. So let's talk about what no longer makes sense and what's worth releasing to make room for the life you truly want. 1. Releasing the weight of toxic relationships and social pressure. You may have spent much of your life maintaining relationships out of habit, obligation, or a sense of duty. Whether it's a longtime friend who constantly drains your energy, a family member who always finds something to criticize, or social circles you no longer connect with, you've likely stayed because it felt easier than walking away. There's often a quiet belief that cutting ties is selfish, or that we owe people our loyalty no matter how they treat us. So you keep showing up, answering calls, nodding along because that's what's expected. But over time, those kinds of relationships begin to take a toll. Even if you tell yourself you're used to it, the emotional strain adds up. You may feel anxious before a visit, heavy after a conversation, or even guilty when setting a simple boundary. That constant discomfort chips away at your peace. It takes space in your mind, in your heart, and in your day-to-day life. And the longer you carry those connections, the more they begin to overshadow the relationships that truly nourish you. At this stage in life after 61, you've likely given a lot of yourself to others. You've worked hard, shown up for people, and held space for more than your fair share. But now, your time and energy are too valuable to spend on relationships that leave you feeling small, unseen, or unheard. What made sense in your 30s or 40s, keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, may no longer align with who you are today. You've changed, and that change deserves to be honored, not dismissed. Letting go doesn't have to mean dramatic goodbyes or cutting people off completely. Sometimes it means loosening your grip, reducing contact, or simply choosing not to engage in the same patterns. It could look like stepping back from a group that no longer feels right, or limiting time with people who consistently bring you down. It might even mean redefining what loyalty and kindness look like, putting your well-being first, not last. You're not being cold, you're choosing peace. And that's an act of self-respect. You deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you, listen to you, and love you for who you are and not who they want you to be. By releasing relationships that no longer support your growth, you create room for more joy, more authenticity, and more calm. This chapter of life isn't about holding on at all costs, it's about choosing what aligns with your values now. You've earned the right to feel safe, seen, and supported. And that begins with choosing yourself, one boundary at a time. And once you begin to distance yourself from draining relationships, it becomes easier to question why you've spent so long trying to keep everyone else happy. 2. Freeing yourself from the need to please. You've likely spent a good part of your life caring about what others think. Maybe it started early at school, at work, in your family, where fitting in, being liked, and doing the right thing were encouraged. Over time, it may have become second nature to measure your choices against other people's expectations. You might have dressed a certain way, taken a job that felt respectable, or stayed quiet when you had something to say just to avoid rocking the boat or being judged. But living like that can be quietly exhausting. The more you shape your life around the opinions of others, the more distant you feel from your own voice. You may second-guess decisions that feel right to you, because they might not look right to someone else. You might hold back from doing things that bring you joy out of fear that they'll seem silly or selfish. Constantly worrying about being misunderstood, judged, or talked about keeps you small. It chips away at your confidence and creates a kind of invisible cagione that's hard to see, but even harder to live inside. At this point in your life, especially after 61, you've gathered enough wisdom to see things differently. You've lived through ups and downs, made hard choices, and learned who you are through experience and not through anyone else's lens. That makes the old habit of people-pleasing feel not just tiring, but unnecessary. You start to realize that no matter what you do, people will always have opinions, and most of the time, those opinions say more about them than they do about you. Continuing to live for someone else's approval simply doesn't fit with the self-respect you've spent decades building. Letting go of this pressure doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop letting their voices drown out your own. Instead of asking, "What will they think?" try asking, "What do I need?" or "What feels true for me?" Give yourself permission to choose differently. Maybe that looks like dressing in a way that feels comfortable, not trendy. Maybe it's saying no to an invitation without guilt. Maybe it's retiring earlier than expected, or starting something new just because it excites you. Whatever it is, the more you trust your instincts, the freer you become. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain yourself or seek permission to live your life the way you want. That's one of the quiet freedoms of this stage of life. You get to come home to yourself. The people who truly love and respect you won't need you to shrink to make them comfortable. They'll celebrate your choices, just as you've likely celebrated theirs. So go ahead, live your life for you. You've earned that right, and it's time to use it. As you stop living for others' approval, you may also notice the physical and emotional weight you've been carrying around often, without even realizing it. 3. Clearing out the clutter, inside and out. You've probably spent decades collecting things: furniture, clothes, photos, kitchen tools, decorations, gifts you didn't ask for, maybe even entire boxes of items you've forgotten about. Most of these things came into your life with good intentions, for usefulness, comfort, or simply because you had the space. Over time, though, those possessions begin to pile up. What started as a few keepsakes or necessities can quietly become clutter. And while it's normal to hold on to items that carry memories or meaning, it's also easy to become weighed down by the things you no longer need or use. The truth is, physical clutter often creates emotional clutter too. It can make your living space feel cramped or overwhelming, even when it's clean. It can bring on feelings of guilt, like you should do something about it, but don't know where to start. You may even find yourself holding onto things out of fear of forgetting, fear of loss, or fear of regret, and all of that carries a mental load. It takes energy to manage it, even if it just sits in a closet or a garage. Day after day, it becomes background noise in your life via quiet, persistent weight. But after 61, your relationship with stuff begins to shift. You no longer need to prove anything through what you own. You might notice that the things that once felt essential now feel unnecessary. Maybe the house feels too big, the closets too full, the shelves too crowded. What matters most at this stage is space to breathe, to move, and to enjoy your surroundings. You begin to understand that letting go of physical things doesn't erase your memories or experiences. If anything, it can make room for more of them. Start small. You don't have to overhaul your whole home overnight. Begin with one drawer or one shelf. Ask yourself, do I still need this? Or does this add peace or joy to my life? Let that be your guide. Donate what you no longer use. Pass along meaningful items to loved ones. And release anything that brings stress instead of comfort. Decluttering doesn't mean stripping your life bare. It means clearing away what no longer reflects who you are, so that your space supports who you've become. You deserve a home and a life that feels calm, light, and grounded. When you clear out the physical clutter, you also give your mind more space to rest and your heart more space to feel. There's something deeply freeing about walking into a room that feels open, not overcrowded. And the same is true inside you. By choosing to live with less, you make room for more of what truly matters: connection, creativity, peace, and presence. You're not losing anything, you're making space for your life now. And with more space to breathe, both inside and out, you might start to see that some of the goals you've held onto no longer reflect who you are now. 4. Outgrowing old goals and making space for what matters now. For much of your life, you probably had a clear idea of what success looked like. Maybe it was building a solid career, buying a home, raising a family, or saving a certain amount of money. These goals helped guide your decisions and gave your days structure. You pushed forward, kept busy, and focused on achieving milestones that, at the time, felt deeply important. And for a while, they were. Those goals reflected the season of life you were in. But over time, those same goals can become more of a burden than a motivation. You might feel pressure to keep chasing things that no longer spark joy, like advancing your career, expanding your finances, or maintaining routines that once defined you. You may keep striving simply because that's what you've always done, even if your heart isn't in it anymore. This can lead to frustration, burnout, or even a quiet sense of disconnection from your own life. You're moving, but not necessarily in a direction that feels right anymore. Now that you've reached your 60s, your relationship with goals naturally changes. You're not the same person you were in your 30s or 40s, and that's a good thing. Your values have likely shifted. What once felt urgent or meaningful may no longer resonate. The desire for accomplishment might give way to a deeper craving for peace, connection, or simplicity. Holding on to outdated goals can keep you tethered to an old version of yourself, one that you've already outgrown. It's not failure to let go, it's growth. It may be time to gently ask yourself, do these goals still reflect who I am today? If the answer is no, that's your invitation to release them. Let yourself set new intentions based on what you should do, but on what feels right now. Maybe your new goal is to spend more time in nature, deepen your relationships, or explore a passion that was once put on hold. Let joy, not obligation, guide your next steps. You don't need a finish line, you just need a direction that feels nourishing. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to move on from goals that no longer fit. What matters now is how you feel, how you live, and how aligned your choices are with your present self. This stage of life isn't about proving anything to anyone, it's about being true to what's real for you. You've already built, achieved, and provided so much. Now is the time to build something softer, something rooted in peace, purpose, and freedom. Let yourself evolve. You've earned that grace. Letting go of outdated goals also softens your view of the future, helping you focus less on what's ahead and more on how you feel today. 5. Making peace with the unknown and embracing the present. It's common to feel uneasy about the future, especially as you get older. Thoughts about what lies ahead, your health, your independence, or even the idea of death might surface more often than they used to. Sometimes those thoughts show up quietly while you're lying in bed at night. Other times they hit harder, sparked by a medical appointment, the loss of a friend, or just a quiet moment of reflection. This kind of fear is human, and you're not alone in feeling it. But when that fear stays unchecked, it can quietly take over your daily life. You might find yourself worrying constantly about what could go wrong, what you haven't done yet, or what you might lose. It can keep you from enjoying the simple things like a good meal, a conversation, or a walk outside. The more you focus on what might happen, the harder it becomes to stay present with what is happening. That anxiety can be heavy, and it often lingers in the background, even during moments that are meant to feel light. The truth is that fear doesn't serve you the way it might have in the past. At this point in life, after 61, you've likely faced more than a few unknowns already, and you've made it through. You know now that worrying doesn't actually prevent loss or guarantee control. It only steals time from the moments that still belong to you. The future is always uncertain, no matter your age. But what is certain is the value of the time you have right now. So instead of living in fear, you can gently shift your focus. Start by grounding yourself in the present. Notice what feels good, what brings you peace, what gives your day meaning. You might find comfort in small routines, spiritual practices, time with loved ones, or moments of quiet that remind you you're still here. You don't have to pretend fear doesn't exist, but you can choose not to let it lead. Consider journaling, meditating, or simply breathing deeply when worry creeps in. These aren't fixes, they are ways to come back to yourself. There's so much life left to live, and you deserve to experience it without fear clouding every step. You've earned the right to enjoy this time, and not by avoiding thoughts of the future, but by accepting that it will come whether you worry or not. What matters most is what you do with the time that's right in front of you. Be here for it. The joy, the connection, the quiet, the laughter. This isn't the end of your story, it's a chapter where you get to live more freely, more calmly, and more on your own terms. Because once you're no longer held back by fear, pressure, or clutter, you're free to live these years with clarity, confidence, and calm. This is your time to live fully. For much of your life, you may have tried to meet expectations from society, family, or even your younger self. You might have held on to goals, relationships, routines, or roles that once made sense, but now feel heavy. It's natural. Many of us are taught to keep going, to keep giving, to keep proving ourselves. But over time, that pressure builds. It creates a quiet kind of exhaustion. You start to question if the things you're doing still reflect who you are, or if you're simply doing them out of habit or fear of change. That disconnection can leave you feeling restless, even if your days are full. The more you try to fit into an old version of life, the more distant you can feel from your present self. After 61, something shifts. You've seen enough, felt enough, lived enough to know what truly matters. The need to impress or chase fades. Peace becomes more valuable than perfection. You realize that life isn't about holding on, it's about knowing when to let go. That includes the pressure to be everything to everyone, the fear of judgment, and the burden of outdated dreams. So take a breath. You don't need anyone's permission to make a change. You can release what no longer serves you and choose what brings you joy now. Whether it's simplifying your space, rethinking your priorities, or simply saying no more often, you're allowed to make life lighter. You've earned the right to live freely, truthfully, and fully, not for anyone else's approval, but because your life, your energy, and your peace are worth it.